All right, so thank you, everybody who's here. I'll appreciate it if you can be a great audience and, hold your attention here. If you're not interested in being here, then this is not the right spot for you. So our students have had quite a bit of time to come up with some topics that are sort of relevant to current biology. One of the problems that I find with college bio is that we focus so much on the very, very old things and base discoveries, and it's very survey, like a little bit here and there, and it doesn't give us a chance to really delve into some of the new stuff. So that's what this research presentation is about. When you enroll in college bio, for each semester they ask us to do a research assignment. The first semester we do a pretty formal, like regular research paper on a topic that I assign. Today's is just a little bit different. They get to pick the topic that they like, and they have to do the research. So you do it like you would do a regular research assignment, but then we don't do a formal writing project. There's no paper that goes with this. We are just going to do this like an oral presentation. And the parameters that you're looking for, they had to find a scientific study of research, something like a discovery or some kind of like application of scientific method. They have to tell you a little bit about it. They have to sort of evaluate why it's useful, and they're going to talk to us a little bit about how this is sort of important for society. And they're looking to hit 4 to 6 minutes, so I'll be running the time. They are absolutely willing to answer questions, although I will say we're going to try to keep the questions between 3 and 4 questions. I know some of them tried to sprinkle questions within their friends so that they could handle the questions, but we're going to try to mix that in with some of our audience too. So if you have a question, hold it till the end, and then we'll see how they do. They obviously are not being graded on how they answer the questions, because we know that these are really broad, this is like brand new stuff that they're finding out. So obviously there might not be a specific answer that they can provide you. Thanks for coming. We're really glad that you get to see this. We're glad that you get to be part of this, and it makes it, I think, a little bit more realistic for our students who have to practice sort of doing this whole public speaking thing. Without further ado, this is Jack Ryan.
Hi,
Fix the mic.
You getting on? Hi, my name is Jack Ryan. Today I will be talking about how can a lack of sleep kill. So, who here, by show of hands, had more than 7+ hours of sleep last night?
I think it's just the adults.
Who had around like 5 to 7? Then who's had 4 or less? Alright, so keep that in the back of your mind for now, as this study may cause you to rethink your sleep schedule.
You gotta
The initial questions that this research was designed to address. We all know that a lack of sleep can cause people to become moody or have trouble with decision making. But what happens when people or animals go without sleep? Scientists have known for a long time that sleep deprivation may eventually lead to heart disease, obesity, or diabetes, etc. Although these conditions can be lethal, they do not fully kill something. What actually kills an animal without sleep is still unknown to this day. But a couple of experiments on fruit flies might have brought us one step closer to finding out this mystery. Some background information. Draguna Raguja, an associate professor of neurobiology at Harvard, has always been curious about the never-ending research of sleep deprivation. She has studied other scientists' failed experiments and saw exactly what made their experiments fail. As she continued to research this topic, she was able to come up with a hypothesis about how the cause of death for sleep-deprived animals might not occur in the brain, but occur in the gut. Eventually, her and her team came up with their own experiments to test for her predictions. That's perfect. So these were the results for the first experiment. She used genetically modified fruit flies that were kept awake due to certain tweaks to the neurons to test the effects of sleep deprivation. As the fruit flies went on without sleep, ROS levels continued to increase. ROS stands for reactive oxygen species. These molecules have an oxygen atom that carries a spare electron. ROS are usually used for an organism's metabolism, respiration, and immune system, but having an excessive amount of them can negatively impact the DNA, proteins, and lipids due to oxidation. The ROS's unbalanced oxygen can take away an electron from a DNA, lipid, or protein molecule, negatively impacting the fly cell.
And here, day 1 there wasn't much ROS, but as it continued, day 7 there was a decent amount, and day 10 there was a ton.
Since oxidation occurred due to the ROS molecules, they conducted one final experiment. They wanted to see whether feeding antioxidants to a sleep-deprived fly would keep them alive and get rid of their abundant amounts of ROS.
And to their surprise, the antioxidants did in fact keep them alive.
So how does this research benefit the average citizen? It causes people to rethink their sleep schedule, as something so simple as sleep can actually kill you. It's also important to know, as most people sleep without really knowing how good it is for the body, and how a lack of sleep can really be detrimental to someone's health. What new questions does the result of this research provide? Finding out how many days without sleep, how days without sleep can kill, may solve the question of why we need sleep in the first place. This research also poses the question of if this happens in humans who go countless days without sleep. Also, Rebolja was unable to find out what was making ROS and why ROS is linked to sleep deprivation in the first place. My evaluation, I found this research very interesting, as I've never truly felt what it feels like to go days without sleep. With this research, I'll try my best to not stay up all night, procrastinating on my assignments like I did, last night, or playing video games and actually get some sleep. Any questions? Yes, Joe? So Joe asked, after all this research, will I be actually going to sleep at a good time? Probably not, but I'll try. That's all I can do.
Do humans make ROS, or is that something specific to the fruit flies?
Ms. Schoonmaker asked if humans make ROS, or if it's specific to fruit flies. I'm not too sure. I do know that also there's ROS in mice, because they did some experiments on them too, but otherwise,
Seems reasonable.
Walter?
What made it so hard for scientists to find the true cause of death in sleep paralysis?
Walter asked what made it hard for previous scientists to find out the cause of death for flies or animals without sleep. For their experiments, they didn't really have much of a control group as this one did, as they used the genetically modified flies. So,
We have one more question, Mr. Dishon.
Was there any research into the fruit flies? Was it like a set amount of time that they were kept awake? Or would napping help lower the ROS levels to like counteract the effects of, say, staying up all night?
So Mr. Dishon asked if, wait, what was the question? I'm sorry.
Do shorter spurts of sleep affect the ROS levels, or is it just like chronic sleeplessness?
Okay, do you shorter, like intervals of sleep?
Yeah, so instead of, like you asked at the beginning, like who got 4 to 6 hours, or, so say, somebody in your class only got 4 hours of sleep last night, would a nap the next morning lower their ROS levels, or does it have to be like a long amount of sleep?
Well, they also did some other experiments where they had, I think they had flies would, have just go without sleep for 10 days, and then they would take like a nap, and then they would wake up, and then the next day they'd still be dead like they did.
counteract any ROS level. So,
All right, thank you, Jack. Jack, yep, you're good.
Hi, my name is Walter Evans, and this is the kick behind an artificial fish. Let's get started. Background information. What was the purpose for developing this creation? Well, recently, researchers from Harvard University, in collaboration with researchers from Emory University, had one goal in mind. They wanted to create the first fully autonomous biohybrid fish using only human cardiac muscle cells. To complete this task, the team used prior research and development of 2 projects that they were working on. One of them was in 2012, they created a biohybrid pump, similar to a jellyfish-like creature. And then in 2016, an artificial stingray that was able to swim, which they used rat heart muscle cells. Next slide. Engineering. How does the artificial fish work, and how was it created? Well, the main components in the creation are its plastic skeleton, a pacemaker, and 2 layers of cardiac muscles, one on each side of the tail fin. When one side contracts, the other side stretches. This stretch activates a protein channel, which then activates another contraction. This creates a loop that propels the fish forward. The pacemaker controls the frequency and the rhythm of the spontaneous contractions. Together with the 2 layers of muscle, the generation of the continuous, spontaneous, and coordinated back and forth fin movements was enabled. Because of the internal pacing mechanisms, the fish can live longer, move faster, and swim more efficiently than the team's previous work through trial and error. When creating this fish, they based the shape and the swimming motion off of a wild zebrafish. The most interesting aspect of this fish is how it actually improves with age. The muscle contraction amplitude, the maximum swimming speed, and muscle coordination all increase within the first month, and then it kind of plateaued and then remained constant for the remainder of its life. The biohybrid fish was able to reach speeds similar to zebrafish in the wild and swimming efficacy. The stretching and contracting loop shows the importance of feedback loops such as the heart. Next slide. As you can see above, this is a model of a biohybrid fish. You can see its plastic skeleton with its plastic fins up in the front, and then towards the back you can see its tail fin, which is covered in the 2 layers of the cardiac muscle cells, which do your contracting and stretching to propel the fish. And then in between these muscle cells, stretching along the fish, there is a pacemaker which controls rhythm. Impact of this research. How is this research beneficial to the average person? Well, this research is very beneficial in more ways than one. The biohybrid fish brings researchers one step closer to developing a more complex muscular pump, which will eventually develop into an artificial heart. That's the goal. The team wants to replace malformed hearts in children with an artificial one day. And the fish is substantial progress towards that hefty goal. In the meantime, the team plans on using this research to create even more complex biohybrid species from human heart cells to further advance the progression towards an artificial heart. The impact of this research is very important. Each year, 40,000 infants are born with a heart defect. Many of these children do not survive, and their lives are cut short. An artificial heart could save thousands of lives each year. An artificial heart being created is a step in the right direction, and this biohybrid fish research will help in its development. The research conducted by this team is very important and should not be overlooked, and may one day help many people. there any final questions on biohybrid fish? Alex?
How old is the fish survive?
The fish can actually swim.
Repeat the
Oh, okay. How long can this fish survive? The fish can actually survive for 100 days straight. It could swim continuously for 100 days straight, and then it needs human interaction to get the loop going again. Next question. Jack.
Other than the heart, are there any other types of creations you think that will be made because of fish?
Are there any other types of creations that can be made from the progress of this fish? I believe that the next step is that many other creations can be made, more complex beings. For example, I do not think it's that far off to assume that one day an artificial shark of that size can be created, and many other things. David. What? Cup.
Repeat.
You said, where do they live? They live in a cup, basically, and they just swim around in a circle until they eventually die.
So these are not like out in the wild. This is like lab based.
Yeah,
this is a secure position. So we're not like reintroducing a new species. We're actually like kind of raising this for the cells because then we can use the cells to do
Yes.
biomedical
It's kind of like they're creating a robot.
I thought X-Men, but I was thinking,
Yeah. Symbiote.
Do you think there are any other purposes in this biohybrid fish?
Are there any purposes in this biohybrid fish?
Other purposes.
Are there any other purposes for this biohybrid fish? I believe that there are many purposes that can be studied for this, especially in the basis of arrhythmia and how the heart works. I feel like there's a lot to advance from here, and as time goes on, it'll be complex and more research will come out.
I was wondering if it would anything with like paralysis or where you have like irreversible nerve damage, if you can bypass the nerves to get to, I don't know if that's possible, but.
My research did not go to that extent. Not that far.
That's all right. Do we have any other questions? Thank you so much. Welcome back. Right.
So Jimmy, this is about the increasing abundance of black sea bass. So something about the species, for scientific name is they live along the east coast and throughout of Mexico. They prefer warmer temps. They prey on crab, crayons, other small fish, and some others. Alright, so the impact of the warming water temp. Black sea bass are now classified as a warm water species, meaning they tolerate more temperature. And with the temperature increase around the line and sound, they have increasing population. So recently the Connecticut Department of Environmental Energy has conducted a draw survey on the fish and has shown amounts of abundance near them. And they recently classified them as a new species to target. And some positive effects of this is have increased commercial and recreation yield tracking them, and increased predatory fish. The trade guys have increased come back more to the line south as their population has like fallen during the past due to the Hudson River lead poisoning stuff, UCBs. And some of the negative effects them chunks of their population. They have decreased the lobster population because they prey on it. And some of the colder water species are no longer around the Rotterdam Sound. There's more winter flounder, stuff like that.
I'm Alex Pauly. This is Transdifferentiation. Is immortality attainable? What is transdifferentiation? Essentially, it is when a differentiated cell, which is basically a cell with a specialized function, transforms into a brand new cell with an entirely different function. It can be utilized by both humans and other species like jellyfish, and its main use for humans is disease modeling and drug discovery. How transdifferentiation works. The actual process isn't 100% clear to us, but we do know it has something to do with gene expression. From what we do know, it starts off with a damaged cell being recognized by the body. After this, the PECs dedifferentiate and reproduce rapidly, which basically means they get rid of their original function and undergo mitosis. After this, they lose their pigments and change their shape in order to fit their new requirements. They then differentiate into a new mature somatic cell, which basically means they gain a new function and change their shape, all for what the body needs. In order to enter the cell cycle, the retinoblastoma protein must be inactivated. This is inactivated during hyperphosphorylation, which is a process in the cell cycle which helps prevent cancer and cells clustering up. Once they're able to enter the cell cycle, they're able to repair/replace the damaged cells. Transdifferentiation in nature. The most notable species that use this process is the Turritopsis dorini. It's a species of jellyfish. Through this process, they've been able to grant immortality, which is they are the only species that's able to do so on the planet. Essentially, they can revert their death by going all the way back to the poly-P stage, which is basically like for humans when they're basically a baby. It's automatically activated as soon as they're damaged or start to age. How humans utilize transdifferentiation. Unlike the other species of jellyfish, we can't become immortal, but we can use transdifferentiation for medical use and advancements. An example of this is a generated insulin-producing cells, all made from our liver cells. We take the cells from our liver and we code them in order to produce insulin for people with diabetes and pancreas diseases. The future of transdifferentiation, maybe in millions of years we can become immortal, but as of right now, we're nowhere near that. Right now, we're currently focusing on the medical field. A couple examples of some processes that we've been working on is creation of bone marrow fat that helps with the disease osteoporosis. And also with that, neural reprogramming genes for neurological diseases. This basically helps the patient regain their ability to use their brain and operate their body. Pros versus cons of transdifferentiation. Some of the pros are immune reactions and no need for treatment. So the medicine that you might need for other, like cancer and stuff like radiation. If you undergo this, you don't need any of that. You avoid cell transplantation since you are using your very own cells. And it's also self-supplying, since you're using your own body cells. Now with everything, there are cons. There is a potential of cancer being formed as something might go wrong as new cells enter the cell cycle. A cluster can form. It is very rare, but it can happen. And if you undergo this process at a young age, you could potentially stunt your growth, but I think in the long run it might be worth it depending on your disease. My final thoughts on this is transdifferentiation has great potential. It is something that every human should get excited about, as in 50 years from now it could be a very regular practice in the medical field. It could save countless of lives as well as solve cures like cancer. This is still very new to a lot of doctors, so the fact that we have this much information so early on is very exciting. And I think with more years to come and more research, I think the practice will just get better and better and more people's lives will be saved. Are there any questions? Joe?
So, when the jellyfish undergoes infection, will it forget memory, something like immortal, forget memory?
So Joe asked, will the jellyfish forget the memories? Unfortunately, jellyfish do not have memories. So they will not forget them. Are you talking if humans can undergo this? Well, so Joe asked, if humans can undergo this, will they forget the memories? We do not have that technology quite yet, so we can't experiment on it. But maybe when we get that, I'll let you know. So David asked when we want to research this. I just looked up on Google cool biology projects, and this came up. I think they did.
In your reading, did you come across any of the ethical issues with prolonging human life with this?
So Mr. Deschar asked, as I researched, did I find any ethical issues with prolonging human lives? For me, it was more the scientific part of it, not the ethical. I'm sure, there are definitely ethical reasons that people do not always want to be immortal. But to have that option in the future could be not even just immortal, but just being able to revert your life whenever you want. I think would be very, very cool. Any other questions?
Thank you so much. Wonderful.
You guys hear it? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Louis Swallow, and thank you for coming to my presentation to discuss why is 6 feet for, during the COVID-19 pandemic, obviously we knew that during social distancing, we need to social distance ourselves for 6 feet. But this research project tries to see how far was the actual distance versus what they used to say before. So some introduction here is, when I first researched this, I was like, okay, so who actually made the 6 feet rule? And I came across my good friend, Carl Nuga, came up with this theory in 1897 with his book, Überluftinfektion, which translates to over-the-air infection. As you know, you can probably tell, Carl was a German. And he just, I guess one day decided, okay, maybe if we were far enough, the disease or germs won't spread far enough, I guess, to just slow down germs. There's no really, his book is really scarce among my good friend Google, so I couldn't read about it. And And so the big question is, why 6 feet? It could have been literally any other number. It could have been 20 feet, 100 feet. And so in the 1900s, a few scientists decided to test this theory. And basically what they did, they would put multiple fast capture cameras. I guess they had that back then. It was multiple, it's like multiple bursts of cameras going off at the same time. And so they kind of verified that it was 3 to 6 feet, but recently in November 2020, the year of the pandemic, there was 3 physicists. I couldn't only find one of their names, unfortunately. But, yeah, they basically try to prove this. Whereas, yeah, they said that yes, the sneeze does go 3 to 6 feet, but the actual particles that travel from the sneeze from the nose goes way farther than you would expect. And as with physics, we probably know there's a little bit of math involved. So first thing we should probably discuss is Reynolds number. Reynolds number is basically, it's an inertial force ratio to a viscous force. So a viscous force is like a fluid's, it's a fluid's resistance to a flow. So imagine if like water, water's trying to resist the flow, so in order to resist that, it would try to like come back and just try to match the same amount or overpower. And this brings us to laminar flow versus turbulent flow. And obviously, you must be asking, what is laminar flow, right? And to me, laminar flow it's when Reynolds number is less than 10 to the third power, which is 1,000. And if you think about it, if you were to put this into a ratio, you could say that the viscous force is way higher than a laminar force. And I'm sorry, laminar flow. The viscous force should be higher because if you were to divide inertial force versus viscous force, that viscous force has to be the opposite. If it's under 1,000, it has to be a little bit higher. And the second thing you should know is turbulent flow. Turbulent flow is it's exactly what it sounds like. It's basically when, so it's a Reynolds number above 10,000, which is a huge increase. And its inertial force is way higher than a viscous force. And you can almost imagine, if you were to, obviously, my beautiful drawings, you can see on the left side, that's what turbulent flow looks like. It almost looks like as if the air molecules were to create a whirlpool. And yeah, and as you can see, I have contained it within a box. If you were to display that, it's very hard to contain, especially because its inertial forces are much higher than viscous. And whereas you can see laminar flow, the blue represents like a wall almost. So the laminar flow, I have really shaky hands, so it's almost parallel to each other, the lines. So then these 3 physicists, they decided to run an experiment. So the experiment is trying to simulate how a human sneezes, but there's some limitations to this, whereas different humans have obviously different types of sneezes. You know, some people sneeze with their mouth, which is disgusting stuff, right? And some people sneeze with your nose or both. I don't know. And so basically, they used a pulse jet, which uses 30,000 Reynolds number and compressed air. The nozzle lets out about 80,000 milliliters of air, and when it goes to it's called a solenoid tube, it goes down to an average of 40 meters per second. And this is because an average human sneezes about 10 meters per second to 50 meters per second. So these scientists were like, all right, we'll just average it and try to include everyone. I'm sorry to anyone that sneezes under or over that. Also, meters per second also just means velocity. So if I were just to say velocity, I don't want you guys to get confused from that. So the average particle size was 14 micrometers, and this is a little bit where the limitations come into play, because particle size, so yeah, the limitations to this experiment is a particle. So as you can see on the graph, the samples come up to around 14 micrometers. That's like almost the average. And some things they were encountering were like, if the particle was just a little bit too small, it would evaporate too quickly. But then if you were to make it too big, it would just not be realistic. So like, that's one limitation to this experiment. But they prepared to do this. So as you can see, that's the sneeze. I don't know if you can see, but it says 6 feet, 10 feet, 40 feet. Yeah, so it says 6 feet, 10 feet, 14 feet, 18 feet, and 22 feet. As the sneeze evolves, it reaches almost 20 feet right here, 18, 20-ish feet here. And that's just the part, just zooming down. Okay, and it takes 13 seconds to reach that 18 feet mark. The picture unfortunately got cut off, but over here there's like a little bit of green that shows that it's 22 feet almost. But yeah, but most of the molecules will expire around like the 10 to 14 feet, but some of them may continue up to 18 to 22. So why does this help the average citizen? You know, you're gonna probably be wondering, why is Nabil presenting about sneeze molecules? That's disgusting. And well, it shows that not everything that is old can always be accurate, because this rule of 6 feet has been here since like the Spanish flu, and half of us were probably not even born, or most of us.
I am not as old.
So yeah, and also now we know how far your sneeze goes, so I guess that's a big up. Some personal thoughts on making this presentation was, I genuinely thought it was an interesting concept to combine biology and physics, because they're really different. They're both sciences, obviously, but physics is really more about like the math of it, like the math part of science, and it's more. It's way more strict. It's like there's more of a guideline to follow. Whereas biology, it's more like you got to read this, interpret it, and just mold it onto a paper. I'm sorry, Mrs. Cooney.
It is what it is.
Thank you for watching my presentation. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand. Jabron.
If you were to match, would it like shorten the distance?
So Jabron said, if I were to wear 2 masks, would it shorten the distance? Well, there is a graph on the research paper I did. Unfortunately, I couldn't put it onto here because it didn't really relate to the thing at the moment. But so basically, they recommended not to really wear surgical masks, because even if you were wearing it, it goes 2.5 feet above the mask, and then N95, like the ones that everyone's wearing. The problem with it removes everything forward, but everything that comes out the side still remains. So yeah, that's why the N95 masks are not really viable. And what they recommended was that you should wear homemade 3-layered cotton masks, which, let's be honest, no one's gonna wear that. That's just too much. And yeah. And is there any other questions?
Well, I was just kind of interested that you said after 13 seconds that sneeze was still traveling, which means that even though we stay 6 feet apart, that it doesn't really matter. Like even if you leave and somebody comes in, like that, it's 6 feet apart, and like 15 seconds from now, like I don't want to enter your space.
Yeah, I went to sneeze right now.
They never took that into consideration. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, folks, for coming. Oh, Mr. Disho had one more question. All right, that's the next period in class. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Aaron, you are on. I'm excited to hear about the effects of ocean acidification.
Yeah, okay. Hi, hello, this is Rebecca. My presentation is on effects of ocean acidification, and as I like to call it, no more fishies. So, okay, so where do you think the carbon dioxide released from burning coal, oil, and gas goes? You don't have to answer this, but it's actually 30% in the ocean. So water combines with carbon dioxide to make carbonic acid, as you see. The ocean's average pH is around 8.1, and as of right now, it is decreasing. This is kind of what it looks like. Why is this a problem now? Originally, scientists thought that since the carbon was being taken care of by rivers and rocks, that, oh, we don't have to worry about it. But that's not quite the thing. Since so much carbon is being dissolved into the ocean and the rivers cannot keep up, so it's actually causing the ocean to become more acidic. Basically what this is. This is just a little fun fact. Since the industrial era, the ocean has absorbed roughly 525 billion tons of CO2 from the atmosphere, which is also carbon. Which I mean is a lot. So, why does it really matter? It basically kills anything and everything from seaweed to coral to animals. So, like I said, no more fishies, no more fishing, no more anything really. Effects on humans. It would obviously decrease the number of jobs. Economies would go down. Everything of the sorts, basically everything would be messed up. What can we do about it? Honestly, you could just tell people, like people say, turn off your lights when you're not using them, recycle, walk, whatever. But just reduce things, basically. This is where I got my work from. Honestly, when I researched this topic, I thought it was ridiculous because who really cares about the ocean being acidic? And yeah. But once I did more research, I was like, dang. So we're really gonna lose everything in the ocean. Good to know. Any questions? Yeah.
How do the fish alright, so let's say they're in the water, do they just dive into toxins or is it something with alien? Or how does it die?
Okay. He asked how do the fish basically die? So fish need a certain pH or kind of water temperature, water quality to survive. So say something of that nature changes, right? Fish become sick. And eventually what happens is that they become so sick that they just die. So to make more fish would be probably very hardly impossible.
They're not necessarily, and I'm just going to answer a little bit, they're not necessarily taking anything in, it's just that what their cells need to live with, if you remember homeostasis, like the appropriate environment.
It's more just a temperature.
Well, it's pH, so it's not temperature, but it's the chemical makeup of the water. And if the chemical makeup matches what your cells need, then you survive, and if it doesn't match, then you don't survive. So it's more about exposure than it is consumption. I wanted to ask you, you said that in the beginning they thought rivers and like streams were efficiently removing carbon dioxide. Why are they efficient whereas the oceans are not?
Okay. Your question was why are the rivers more efficient than oceans? Because the rivers have rocks, and you get chemicals from the rocks that they thought eventually would break down the carbon, so it wouldn't be such a problem. Yes.
So we know that water temperatures are also increasing in the ocean. Is this allowing more carbon dioxide to be held or less?
His question was if the temperature was also related to the pH, and would this affect how much carbon is being held? And it holds more. Any other questions?
Good. All right, you're good. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Maya, and I'm talking about what I'm doing for photosynthetic. Alright. So what does it mean to be photosynthetic? Someone may ask. Photosynthesis is the process by which plants use sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to create oxygen and energy from the sun. There's three organisms. No, I'm sorry about that. So plants, algae, and cyanobacteria are the only organisms that carry out photosynthesis right now. Question is who wants to do that? So, what's the benefits and drawbacks of being photosynthetic? When it comes down to it, there's not much of a benefit if you think about it. So for one, there's a lot of things wrong with it if you was to do it. No pesticides or the right organelles in us to carry it out. The reason I plants is looking at it is pesticides, and they use less energy than us and whatnot. If you was to carry out photosynthesis right now, it would only use about 5% of the energy, which is not enough. Which is not enough to power us and what we need. Is it possible? At the moment, no, it's not. However, there was an experiment done with a Chilean scientist, and he did an 8-year trial, and he basically found that he could genetically modify microalgae into human cells, and that can be used to repair nerves and also produce oxygen for areas where they need to repair skin and whatnot. So he's now conducting an experiment with 20 patients in a hospital out there in Chile to see if he's going to try to do it with cancer patients and terminally ill patients, because the cell that he genetically modifies can recover cells, therefore can eradicate cancers while attacking the pathogens in the cells. My sources. So basically, even if we was to become photosynthetic, we wouldn't be as sufficient as we are now with the energy that we use and whatnot. Questions?
So I like that, we read this article, I don't know if you guys remember this, we read this last semester, but you found a research assignment that went with it, which I thought was interesting. And they said they were trying to put and I just want to make sure I have it right, inserting, genetically modifying human cells with microalgae so that those cells would be able to carry out photosynthesis.
Yes.
Remember, one of those byproducts is oxygen. What would the benefit be of being able to get those types of cells into, say, cancer patients? Like what's the benefit of that?
I'm glad you asked. That's a good question. Thank you for asking. I guess I read in my findings that oxygen could increase the cell's ability to repair itself. So if more oxygen was present in the cell, such as like a lot of heart diseases are caused by lack of oxygen. So if there's more oxygen present, those illnesses can be eradicated. Any questions? Oh, Christian's back.
During these 8-year trial, what kind of organisms did you test on?
Okay, Christian asked me during his trial what kind of organisms did he test on. That's a good question. Thank you for asking. Okay, so he tested on snakes, rats, and fish. Was the other 3, those 8 years.
So during the presentation, you said it only provides about 5% of the energy needed. Is that for all of those species that were tested, or was it an average, or humans?
Okay, Ms. Bishon asked if that 5% of energy was for organisms. That was if we was to be photosynthetic right now as humans, we would only be able to obtain and use 5% of energy, which means being more to survive over that. So, yeah. Thank you for the question. Any other questions?
I think you're good. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming out this afternoon. My name is Joshua from McNeil, for those of you that do not know. And today I'll be talking about the range of climate change, as well as the causes and ways that we can prevent climate change from happening, and overall how long it has been an issue in society. How far back has it actually occurred in our society? Well, not our society, but in the world. Approximately 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs died due to an issue that is currently still existing, but not directly related. I will talk about that further on in this slideshow, but what actually is climate change? Climate change is the direct long-term shift in temperature and weather. The effects of climate change can ultimately lead to extinction and forcing organisms to learn to adapt to their environment. Another term that I want everyone else to know before continuing my slideshow is greenhouse warming. What exactly is it? Greenhouse warming is the abundance of carbon dioxide released into the environment. What are the causes of global warming? The causes of global warming include burning fossil fuels and polluting the air and water, as well as chopping forests down, also known as deforestation, because it releases CO2 into the environment, which ultimately does not help anyone. Another impact, which is related to the dinosaurs and their extinction, is natural influences, which I'll also be talking about later on in the presentation. What are ways that we could prevent global warming from happening and overall decreasing life expectancy? So we all know those nasty paper straws that McDonald's uses. And I know none of us want to use them, and I go home and I use a metal straw because they're so bad. But overall, they help us out with the environment, even though it's such a small thing, as well as recycling. And solar energy is actually a pretty good way, even though it might be expensive and most people can't afford it. But, well, I don't mean to say that to hurt anyone's feelings, but hopefully in the future that'll be something that will be common and less expensive. Huge events that occurred in our environment that ultimately led to a higher increase of CO2 and other gases that harm the environment are nuclear usage and waste, like, for instance, the bombings and stuff that occur and leave nuclear waste behind definitely is not helpful for the environment. And an article that I read a while ago, and I kind of just stuck onto it because I thought like it was like kind of unbelievable, was the PCBs dumping in the Hudson River and how there's 1.3 million highly toxic industrial compounds that were released, and businesses didn't really care because they were making money off of it, and they didn't want to spend money cleaning it out, and they're kind of forced to after a while. And another event that occurred is the overall extinction of dinosaurs. I think the extinction of dinosaurs is very important for humans and any organism to survive because it teaches us about what global warming ultimately can do and like how deadly it is, and it overall just isn't good, obviously. What actually happened to the dinosaurs? Many of you probably already know, but volcanoes and meteors are the two theories that most people like to think about on how they died, and no one's really sure, but we know for sure that it was definitely related to global warming and gases being released into the atmosphere. And volcanoes are said to release release gases and dust particles into the air, which is called solar radiation, which reduces sunlight in the Earth's atmosphere, and obviously that's not good for plants and very deadly. Meteors, the melting of rocks actually releases CO2 into the environment, and too much CO2 is what global warming is. And the term for that is known as greenhouse effect, which I also used earlier in the presentation. Are there any questions? Joseph?
So, I obviously didn't know that volcanoes can kill dinosaurs. I thought it was a big asteroid meteor.
There's multiple theories that people like to believe. Oh, the question was, sorry. The question was it wasn't really a question, it was kind of like a comment, and he said that he didn't know that it was just the volcanoes that killed the dinosaurs. He thought it was meteors. And there's actually many theories, but none are confirmed to be true. But people overall generally think it was related to global warming and how overall gases in the environment decreased life expectancy and made changes for organisms to survive. Mrs. Goodmaker?
So are you suggesting in this forum that because climate change is still happening, that potentially we are looking at a catastrophic, extinction process that could ultimately be the result of this wave of climate change, similar to what happened to the dinosaurs?
Yeah. Mrs. Goodmaker asked if the overall, what I'm saying is that the overall climate, what's going on now in the environment and how deadly it is, if what I'm saying, will it decrease how long humans live and other organisms? And I think that, yeah, I think that's an actual issue in today's environment, and I don't know how long it's going to be until that happens, but definitely soon, and I think it's something to prepare for and take care of. Are there any other questions? Daniel?
Do you think tsunamis happened back then?
Do I think tsunamis happened back then? Well, I'm not really sure how that relates to my topic, but I'm sure they did. David?
What do tsunamis have to do with global warming?
I know they have to relate to gravity, and I don't know too much on that, but if you're willing to look it up, have a shot at it.
Starting to see why Ken didn't take this one.
Are there any other questions?
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Samia Khan, and my research is about getting a step closer to regeneration. But first, we have to talk about limb loss. And limb loss is a lot more common than we think. According to Ohio State University, nearly 2 million Americans are living with a limb loss today. Not only that, but roughly 185,000 amputations occur in the country each year. And even in New York itself, if you look at this graph, you can tell that's decreasing, but there still has been a total of 150,000 amputations that happen in this state alone. And while there's been amazing advancement in prosthetics, they don't ultimately replace limbs. They don't bring back that sense of touch, nor reduce phantom pain, nor bring back that full functionality. And this brought on the question, could we regenerate our limbs and bring back that full functionality? To make this idea even plausible, researchers at Tufts University looked at regenerative animals, such as salamanders, axolotls, and more, and using them as a reference, they created a device called the biodome. This biodome not only blocks signals that allow scar formation, but they also encourage regenerative cells. The species that were used for this experiment are called African clawed frogs. And they can't regenerate their limbs, so it's a perfect option. And so in the experiment itself, they were amputated and then separated into 3 different groups. One group was a control group, where they were not given anything. The second group were given the biodome, and the third group was given the biodome and additional drugs that contribute to animal development. Over the course of 18 months, these researchers observed how the frogs reacted to it. And if you look at the first row here, this is the control group. As you can see, they did not develop limbs, and they instead developed stubs. However, if you look in the third group, this group was given the biodome and other additional drugs, and as you can see, they fully developed their limbs again. Not only that, but they actually restored their touch too. However, on occasion, some of these frog legs were actually being fractured, showing that there's still so much to learn before we can actually perfect regeneration. As you saw, this experiment was successful, which shows that it could potentially be applied to humans one day. And if we can actually allow these humans to grow back a functional limb. And we can also, not only that, but reduce phantom pain, and we can also provide them a sense of touch so that they can feel the warmth of their loved ones. These results also raise other questions. If we could apply this to humans and have been successful, could we expand more on that? Could we regenerate more than just limbs? Could we could we regenerate heart tissue and brain tissue? Could we increase life as that occurs? Could we learn more about just how complicated organ reconstruction is through regeneration? And while we don't have the answers to these just yet, this experiment could hopefully provide those answers one day. I really enjoyed researching this topic and learning just how it could help people. And it also proves something that's not that possible, like regenerating limbs that biologically can't happen is amazing. But my only concern with it was that it wasn't the most ethical. Unless you think cutting frogs is okay, cutting up frogs is okay, but nonetheless, the possibilities that this experiment could bring is fascinating, and I hope you guys are fascinated by it too. This is my bibliography, and yeah. Yes, Mrs. Schoolmaker?
That's not a bibliography, that's a list of websites.
It's called
That's a comment, not a question.
So I did want to, first of all, I find this really interesting. My dad has 2 amputated legs, so this to me is really, it is interesting. In the solution the Biodome was using, whatever the treatment was, are they tapping into like the potential of the cells that are there at the amputation site, or are they, did you read anything about like what were they doing? How did they trigger those cells that would not traditionally be dividing this way to start dividing?
The Schoolmaker asked if I have looked into how like the device would like trigger these cells to actually regenerate. Unfortunately, I did not read upon that. However, the article I did find it from does have the answer, and I'll link it to you after. Yes, Alex?
For the regenerative limbs, how does like the nervous system work? Is it like automatically connect to the rest of the body? Or is it...
Alex also asked if how the nervous system was developed. Again, I unfortunately do not have the answer to that too, but hopefully we can find that soon. Yes?
Is there any reason why they experiment on frogs?
David asked if there's a reason why they experiment on frogs. My guess is maybe they're more biologically closer than other animals. So, and plus they're closer to reptiles that actually do regenerate limbs. Yes, Joseph?
How would old age affect all that? Like, let's say if it
Sorry,
happens
could you repeat your question again?
Oh, like how would age affect that? Like if they're younger or older, like even with frogs, does their full leg just grow back to normal? Or is it
Joseph
like a
asked,
baby leg?
my bad. Joseph asked how age could affect this. Once again, I do not have the answer. This experiment is relatively new, so. Anyone else? Oh, Joy, you're waving? I'm sorry, I did not see that.
How long did it take for an amputated part to come back?
Sorry, repeat that?
How long does it take to get a limb back?
So, Joy asked how long it took to take a limb back. In this frog experiment, it took roughly 18 months for it to actually regrow back. I don't have the answer for humans because that has not been tried yet.
Yeah, but it's still 18 months, so.
Yes, Deshaun?
In your research, was there anything that scientists were talking about the possibility for using this for people that were born missing limbs?
I actually spaced out, my bad. Could you repeat your question?
So was there any reading that you came across that talked about the use of this for people, not just for regeneration of lost limbs, but maybe for people that were born missing limbs?
Mr. Deshaun asked if there was any other purposes to this, to any other people than this. They never specified who this could be applied to. So hopefully this could also be applied to these limbs, to people who were born without limbs. Yes, Malcolm?
Can I get an extra arm?
Mel asked if you could get an extra arm. No, you're not a Hindu god. Yes, Deshaun?
Could this help regenerate hair?
Mr. Deshaun asked if this could regenerate hair. I'm sorry, there's no hope for you, Mr. Deshaun.
All right, I think I'm going to cut off the questions there.
Oh, no.
Thank you, Samia. Thank you very much.
My presentation is about bees, specifically their declining population. The questions to address. Why are the bees decreasing? What are the effects specifically on our food security and the economy? And what can be done to stop them from decreasing? Starting with some statistics. The number of bee colonies has decreased 55% from their height, which, as you can see from the graph, was in 1947 when there was about 6 million of them. Today, there's 2.7. Also, 1/3 of our food production relies on pollinators. All of the food we eat, 1/3 of it is reliant. And 75% of all the foods that we grow relies on pollinators. The Why are the bees dying? Main cause is pesticides. They are a poison that is meant to kill any organisms that threaten the survivability of a plant, and unfortunately that includes bees. It usually kills them or severely damages their immune system. Habitat loss. The agriculture business cuts down a lot of forests and a lot of different habitats for their fields, and that destroys the bees' natural homes and the bees' natural food. Monocultures. Monocultures are where an agricultural field only grows one kind of crop. With only one crop, the bees only have one type of food source, which weakens the bees. Also, only one kind of crop means much more pesticides are needed because they are more susceptible. Climate change. Rising temperatures changes the plant life. It changes, the cycles of the flowers, which then affects the bees and their feeding. And disease and parasites. All of these four causes makes the bees weaker and makes them more susceptible to disease and parasites that often kills them and hurts them. The consequences of their declining numbers. Mainly, there's an issue with our food security. Many of the foods we eat, mainly fruits and vegetables, cannot be grown without the bees and other pollinating insects. And so we would have a lot less food. And also, a lot of food that pollinators create for us, we use to feed our livestock. So we would have a lot less food there. Also, the economy. Hand pollination, which would be necessary if we lost all the bees. It's time consuming and very expensive. And also, many countries and farmers rely on agriculture as an income. And also, less supply of these foods means way higher prices for the rest of us. This also affects the environment and the atmosphere, along with the economy and the food security. What can we do? Mainly, stop using pesticides. There are many natural pesticides that work as well that will stop killing bees, and it also makes our food safer. More biodiversity, which just stop making monocultures. Less habitat destruction, which can be fixed with planting more wild plants and flowers. And lessen climate change. All of the things that we are doing as a society that is creating a higher temperature in the world. How does this research benefit non-researchers? This problem has very far-reaching effects. If bees keep declining, everyone will be affected with the lack of food. We'll all have a better understanding of the environment. It's helpful to know how food is grown, and it is important because bees are a keystone species, meaning they affect a lot of other organisms, and they're very important in our environment. And there are personal things that we all can do to make this problem better by planting gardens, wildflowers, and building bee hotels. New questions that this research brought up. What would happen if all of the bees disappeared and we still have 2.7 million in the world, colonies in the world, but what would happen if they all disappeared? Can humans actually live without bees, or are they entirely necessary for our life? And is a world without bees something that's going to happen in the near future? Are they decreasing fast enough that we will see a time where they're gone completely? My evaluation. I think this problem is pretty difficult to understand and to see because we are not beekeepers, most of us, or farmers. So you don't really see the effects, and so it's a little difficult to understand. And I also think this is way more important than any of us realize because we can't live without them. But the problem is generally overlooked because of our distance from it. And I also think it's pretty indicative of man-made consequences because all of the causes of their decline are things that we're doing. Monocultures, climate change, pesticides. It's all human-made problems that are affecting them. Any questions?
I do have a question. So I actually have done, I've read about this quite a bit. I actually had, I think 2 or 3 years ago, we did a research paper on it. But my understanding is if you're in California, you can hire bees they can hire, like it's an industry now. You hire people who are beekeepers and they bring their honeybees to your almond tree farm. And so you can actually pay people to do that. So I think that we are, maybe we're stepping in and we're farming them. I don't know if that seems so strange to say, well, you farm horses, but I think we're farming bees in a way that to kind of coincide with this need. So I don't know if you read anything about that.
I have heard of that, renting bees for your agriculture business, and raising them in such a way instead of just letting their numbers decline would certainly help combat this, but I did not read anything specific.
Yeah, is there anything, I'm wondering if there's any evidence that shows like now that, because people have become more and more aware of the bee issue. I think if you look on your Haagen-Dazs ice cream tops, it all says, it says save the honeybees on like every little canister. But I didn't know if you'd seen maybe in like the last couple of years if there's been a change. I know then with COVID everything changed, but.
Well, I have found that incredible decline from 6 million colonies to 2.7. In the last couple of years, it has plateaued, where it's not decreasing as much anymore. And the low was actually at 2.5 million. That was in 2008, so we've increased a little since then.
Okay.
Isha?
So these honeybees are non-native species. That graph you showed at the beginning, did you see any similar things with like our native pollinators or their declines?
No, I did not find anything specific to one area or another. It was just in general over the world. Any other questions?
Does anybody raise bees? No. You do? Oh, no, you don't.
Average.
Get out.
I'm a bee nest.
Get out. No, bee nest. Oh God, why do you keep talking? Shit. Okay, thanks, Violet.
So, my name is Ariana Lassane, and I will be talking about introducing aquatic life into rice paddies. Okay, so basically in China, in a university, and I'm going to mess up his name, but Lane, I'm sorry if I messed that up, but him and his colleagues conducted a 4-year-long experiment with rice paddies. They had 3 separate experiments. In each experiment, there were 2 groups. There was RA, which was rice paddies with aquatic animals. Then there was RN, which was rice paddies by themselves, monoculture. And basically, over the course of 4 years, for each of the aquatic animal experiments, they had different animals for each. There was one for carp, mitten crabs, and soft-shell turtles. And basically, after conducting their experiment, they came to the conclusion in all the experiments, the rice paddies that had aquatic animals in their farming, they all produced more rice, and there were other positive effects. And basically, the questions that they were trying to answer was, so basically the question they were trying to answer is, would introducing aquatic animals into rice paddies benefit the shortcomings that come with monoculture, and how would these aquatic animals benefit the ecosystems? Okay, so basically the results were that the rice yields would increase, the decomposition of organic matter increased, it reduced weeds, And the nitrogen levels in the soil, they remain steady. And this is important, and why humans should care about this is because rice is one of the largest contributors of like what humans consume. About 1/5 of the entire world's calories come from rice. So a lot of areas like depend on rice for their livelihood. And since it's such a large source, if we're able to find methods of cultivation that are both efficient and environmentally friendly, that would be a big discovery. Okay, so as for why the other areas of the results of this experiment are important, So when organic matter is decomposed, basically a lot of nutrients is released into the environment, and this nutrients is what allows a lot of plants to grow and flourish. So if we're able to decompose more organic matter, then we're able to produce more plant life. And reduce weeds is like, I feel like everybody who does farming knows that weeds are bad for crops. They're very competitive, so they take over resources, block sunlight, and they can be like really invasive to the crop that you're trying to farm, basically. So they're not good anyway. So, and a steady nitrogen levels in the soil is good because when farmers, because there's not that. Farmers use fertilizer to basically help their crops flourish, and this fertilizer is not very good for the environment. So if the nitrogen levels in the soil are able to remain steady, then farmers have no reason to introduce these like harmful chemicals into the soil, which like they disrupt like the balance of the soil basically. At least that's what I got from what I read. So what new questions does this discovery create? So if we're able to see that aquatic animals are able to increase the production of rice in a more efficient and environmentally friendly manner, then are there other methods, are there other ways we could apply this to different farming techniques of other sources that we also use like on a large basis? So my personal feedback about this experiment, personally, I didn't really care about it too much. I mean, like my family, my dad's side of the family, we use rice in a lot of the stuff that we make. So that's sort of where the idea came from. But I think after some researching, I think that it's an important thing, and it's also a pretty smart move to make, because the things that we use now, they're really damaging to the environment, and like we need the environment to survive. Like we depend on all natural life just like how they depend on us. It's like a coexistence, and if we're constantly damaging like their health and hurting the environment, then what's going to happen to us? Basically just the website I use. I do not have a slide that says questions. So.
That's all right. So when they put in to understand your the experiment correctly, they had some rice that was just monoculture, so just rice, and then they had some rice that had aquatic organisms.
Yes.
Did they find that it was like it was better to have one kind of organism, a variety of organisms, numbers? Did they talk about like Was there a optimum type of environment that they would do?
They didn't really touch on that. What they talked about was basically in the 3 experiments, they only used 1 organism per RA experiment. And in each of those, it was increased yield and other additional benefits. But they didn't compare which one of the organisms did a better job.
Okay.
I don't think so.
They brought in other like populations that weren't naturally living in that area, like
Oh, in the area in general, I think that yes.
Anybody else? Anybody have a third question? Everybody gets 3. All right, let me think of a third. All right, you're good. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rachel Capaldi, and today I'm going to be discussing the practice of using black-eyed peas as a replacement for fertilizer. In my slideshow presentation, black-eyed peas for a better environment. Let's discuss what are the harmful effects of fertilizer. The fertilizer used to grow our produce and strengthen our crops, or even used in our everyday at-home garden, is damaging to our ecosystem in more ways than one. The nitrogen and extra nutrients from the fertilizer run off into our waterways, causing harmful algae blooms. The algae deplete our oxygen levels and pose the threat of making our water toxic to the livestock who consume it. The lower oxygen levels have a detrimental impact on the inhabiting aquatic life and in turn our plant's equilibrium. Initial questions before the findings. How can the need for fertilizer be minimized or eradicated? Can black-eyed peas efficiently replace and carry out the job of fertilizer? What is this practice and how does it work? The University of California's plant pathologist Gabriel Ortiz and his team have undergone research determining the black-eyed peas' efficiency in replacing the job of fertilizer. They have found that black-eyed peas are extremely capable of attracting nitrogen-fixing bacteria which help plants thrive by emitting a chemical from their roots. The pea then forms a tumor-like capsule that houses the bacteria and protects it while also receiving its nutrients and providing the bacteria with its needed carbon. As the pea reaches the end of its life expectancy, it will release the bacteria into the soil and leave that soil with an abundance of good nitrogen-fixing bacteria for the next crops planted. Next, we have the case and its results. The case includes around 20 lagoons and tested their efficiency in coexisting and positively interacting with nitrogen-fixing bacteria, Rhizobia. The results of this case proved the black-eyed peas to be the most efficient lagoon. When altering the crops with the black-eyed peas, when alternating the crops with the black-eyed peas, the crops will benefit greatly from the abundance of Rhizobia. Here are some findings and fun facts. Lagoons are the 3rd largest plant on this planet, and it could be suggested that its successful relationship with Rhizobia could be the reason for its success. Black-eyed peas are drought tolerant, which accounts for their use and dependability in harsh climates. Black-eyed peas' relationship with nitrogen-fixing bacteria has not dwindled, unlike many other land plants today, as a result of human interaction. It could be argued to be stronger than its predecessors. How does it benefit the average citizen? The practice of using black-eyed peas as opposed to fertilizer will not just benefit other researchers, but the entire planet. Its inhibitors, citizens, and our ecosystem, as it will have a positive effect on our oxygen levels, aquatic life, and livestock, which all greatly impact our lives. Here are some possible questions or thoughts with the conclusion of this presentation. What quantity of black-eyed peas are needed in order for the nitrogen-fixed bacteria to be released into the soil to prove useful for plants? How long will it take for the process to work and maintain a sufficient nutrient base for plants? Here's my personal feedback. This research and discovery is a huge scientific advancement and achievement which will allow for a better environment while keeping stable agriculture. This is extremely important as we only have one planet and we need to protect it from environmental devastation that comes with the use of fertilizer. Here are my sources. Are there any questions?
You use the word nitrogen fixing a whole bunch. What does that mean?
Nitrogen fixing?
Yeah. Like nitrogen fixing bacteria. So what does that mean they're doing?
So it's a rhizobia, and it means they're taking the nitrogen from outside in the soil, and the bacteria is absorbing it, and the plants can use that bacteria to their advantage for growing. And in relation to this, the legumes will take the carbon compounds that they produce in the atmosphere, and then they will help provide nutrients for this bacteria. Any other questions, Mr. Duchamp?
So how often do black-eyed peas have to be planted to get this right? Is it like every other rotation?
It's an integration process. So when the black-eyed peas die, they'll leave the nutrient bacteria in the soil, and then new crops can be planted. And then when their season ends, the black-eyed peas are replanted to produce the right amount of nitrogen because fertilizer produces too much. It's harmful. Any other questions? Yes.
Are there any crops that you should integrate with black-eyed peas?
Are there any crops that shouldn't be integrated with the black-eyed peas?
No, the research didn't cover that, but I'm assuming that mostly all plants benefit from good bacteria like rhizobia, so I'm sure that's not an issue. Is that it?
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ireland, and I'm going to be presenting climate change. Research questions to be considered are as follows. What is climate change? What are the effects of climate change? And how is climate change associated with the recent rise in global temperatures? And how is climate change detrimental to the environment and its inhabitants? Results of this research conclude climate change is the variation of average global temperature over a period of time. The effects of climate change include extreme weather, dirty air, rising seas, warmer, more acidic oceans, imperiled ecosystems, and health risks. Climate change is associated with the recent rise in global temperatures due to average temperatures at the Earth's surface increasing and changing their patterns. This is due to the emission of greenhouse gases trapping heat in the Earth's surface. Climate change is detrimental to all living aspects of life. Any form of change in the climate of an ecosystem can affect a variety of the organisms living there. The experiment. A simple experiment has been developed to demonstrate the global warming potential of carbon dioxide gas in the Earth's atmosphere. A miniature electric resistance heating element was placed inside an inflatable balloon. The balloon was filled with carbon dioxide. The element was heated to approximately 50 degrees Celsius. The power was then switched off and the element's cooling trends in the air and in CO2 were monitored. Now we're going to go into the effects of climate change. Extreme weather. As the Earth's atmosphere warms, global warming, the atmosphere collects and retains this heat, releasing more water and altering weather patterns, thus causing higher temperatures to influence and exacerbate the frequency of many natural disasters. Another effect is dirty air. Air pollution is a major result of climate change. Air content becomes dirtier due to the exposure of greenhouse gases, releasing smog and soot. Other factors such as more allergenic pollutants and longer pollen seasons are rising as well. Another effect is rising sea levels. Due to the climatic changes, places such as the Arctic are heating up, causing its ice sheets to melt into our seas, causing a trap for our oceans to rise. Scientists predict anywhere between 0.95 to 3.61 feet by the end of the century. Another effect is warmer and more acidic oceans. Our oceans absorb between a third and a quarter of the fossil fuels being released. As a result, they have become 30% more acidic, posing a serious threat to aquatic life. Resources become scarce and species are forced to relocate. Rising ocean temperatures also affect the population of underwater life, as well as contributing to coral bleaching events that have the potential to kill off an entire ecosystem. These ecosystems support more than 25% of all marine life. Another effect is imperiled ecosystems. Climate change is expanding pressure on all wildlife to adapt to changing habitats. Many species are forced to seek out cooler climates at higher altitudes. This alters seasonal behaviors and traditional migration patterns as wildlife populations are fundamentally being transformed. One study concluded that mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, and other species of vertebrae are disappearing at faster rates than they should be. And the final effect is health risks. As global temperatures continue to rise, so do the number of illnesses and fatalities amongst human society. As air pollution worsens, so does respiratory health. Humans become more susceptible to heart stroke, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, and premature deaths related to extreme weather events, so contaminated water, damaged infrastructure. Benefits. After incurring this information, it is important to take into account the disastrous effects climate change has on our world. As a society, we cannot thrive in an environment that is not thriving. Studying climate change raises awareness on its long-term effects. It has the potential to lessen the harm to ecosystems. It prevents crisis and raises familiarity with human implications. New questions to be considered are: how can we take action to mitigate climate change at home? There are a multitude of ways that we can help improve climate change. These actions include investing in solar power, energy-efficient appliances, electric cars, reducing water waste, and the use of fossil fuels. Number two, what will happen if we do not take action towards climate change? Wildlife and their habitats will be destroyed, leading to mass species extinction. Storms, drought, and natural disasters will become increasingly common and more intense, leading to major health crises and illnesses. And what are global solutions to climate change? As mentioned before, there are a variety of ways we can help reduce the calamitous effects of climate change. However, it will require a wide range of solutions applied together, not just in our homes. We would need to transition all sectors of our economy away from fossil fuels that emit carbon, as well as increase our use of renewable energy sources. Evaluation: we only get one Earth, one chance to be here. And somehow, after sharing all this information, climate change is still active in its devastating effects. It is the foremost issue human society is currently facing, affecting everything from our livelihoods to our health and our future. If we do not take action, the consequences of our actions will continue to worsen. It is about time we start to take action saving our planet, especially after all the taking we've done. Questions? Sydney? So Sydney asked if she believes if I believe carbon capture is an effective way to reduce climate change. And I do, because while reading this research, scientists have predicted that by 2050, if we do use this method, 14% of our greenhouse gases will be reduced.
Besides air pollution, what other pollution affects climate change?
Walter asked, besides air pollution, what other pollution affects climate change? Ocean pollution, land pollution, any type of contamination really has a toll on it.
Do you think it would be worthwhile to institute changes that maybe would be, I don't know, something we have control over, like building-wide or district-wide? Do you think that we should be making changes here at the school to try to foster a better awareness for climate change?
Ms. Newmaker asked if I believe the school should start.
Do you think that we should, as like a school, be making changes, like, I don't know, like at the administrative level, to help us foster sort of this awareness for climate change?
I do believe we should make changes toward that.
What do you suggest as changes that we can do here?
Recycling, just being considerate of how much water we're using each day. I mean, everything plays a factor to that. So, yes.
Thank you very much for researching this. I appreciate it. And the question is from a personal question. Like, you sound like you're really passionate about that. So can you talk about that as a teenager, sitting here on Earth this year, how important this is, you feel that this is in your life?
Well, growing up, I've always loved animals and the environment. So just seeing as we get older, we're at that age where we're starting to realize that we have to make our future. So I just think that.
This is more of a comment, but I know that you mentioned air pollution, and I think that obviously ignorance is sometimes bliss, but I actually was unaware of myself that when my brother was stationed in South Korea, that air pollution is such a big thing that they check it daily like the weather. So I think like if more people knew those type of things, that it might make more of an impact, but it seems like people are just really unaware.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Okay, thank you.
My name is Sydney, and I'm going to be talking about 3D organ printing. 3D bioprinting is a method of printing biomedical structures with the use of viable cells, biological molecules, and biomaterials. Biological molecules are chemical compounds found in living organisms, and biomaterials are synthetic or natural materials suited for the construction of artificial organs. Bioprinting uses a digital file as a blueprint to print an object with cells and biomaterials. These organs are printed layer by layer, just like any 3D printing process. So there's 3 main steps to bioprinting. Pre-bioprinting. This involves creating a digital file for the printer to read. Today, these files are often based on CT and MRI scans. Researchers prepare cells and mix them with their bioink using a live cell imaging system to ensure there are enough cells to print the tissue model successfully. Then it goes on to the bioprinting. Researchers load the cell reading bioink into a cartridge and choose one or multiple print heads depending on the structure they're trying to build. Developing different types of tissues requires researchers to use different types of cells, bioink, and equipment. And then there's the post-bioprinting. Most structures are cross-linked to become fully stable. Cross-linking is usually done by treating the construct with either ionic solution or UV light. The construct's composition helps researchers determine what kind of cross-linking to use. Then the cell-filled constructs are placed inside an incubator for cultivation. So, bioprinting can replace organ donors. Artificial organs printed using bioink made from a patient's own cells will eliminate the need for transplants altogether, removing the need for organ donors and reducing the risk of infection. So the advantages to bioprinting, it's a faster process than an organ donation, and it's readily available anytime. The effects it has on the cells, it gives the cells a greater than 85% cell viability rate. And compared to organ donation, bioprinting is a lot less expensive. As you can see, $300,000 compared to $10,000. So the risk of an organ donor, obviously there's pain after surgery, infection, bleeding, blood clots, immune complication, and in rare cases death. Risks of bioprinting, difficulty keeping the cell alive. Cells and tissues must receive adequate amounts of nutrients and oxygen, otherwise they would die. In the body, these necessities are provided through blood vessels. However, they're hard to print in such small amounts of space. This was the most common problem with bioprinting organs. This technology is still very new, and I have no doubt, based on the research I've conducted, that the technology will continue to advance and the proper improvements will be made. So bioprinting can prevent cell rejection. What is cell rejection? Cell rejection is when the body's immune system attacks the transplanted cells, tissues, or organs. What causes cell rejection? The body's immune system responds to any infections initially triggered by immune system cells known as CD4 and T cells. Over time, as T cells and antibodies damage the organ, it may cause reduced organ function or even organ failure. Treatment for cell rejection in patients include pulse steroid for the first injection episode. It can be repeated for recurrent or resistant rejection. Other steroids like LKT3 are used as second-line treatment in graft function if it's deteriorating. So ways to avoid cell rejection: ensure recipient and donor have compatible blood types. Perform genetic testing to ensure compatible recipient and donor matches. In the case of living donors, donor organs from relatives are preferred. Even though there are ways to avoid cell rejection, the risk is still there. Even when immune suppression medication, the chances of someone experiencing cell rejection in each case is still between 10 and 20%. So clinical testing. 3D bioprinted and integrated platforms for cardiac tissue modeling and drug testing. Recent advances in biofabrication techniques, including 3D bioprinting, have allowed the fabrication of cardiac models that are similar to the human heart in terms of their structure. The importance of developing techniques for assessing the characteristics of 3D cardiac substitutes in real time without damaging their structures has also been emphasized. So this is just the stages. So this would be the 3D scan. And then it has all the stages of that, and then that's what the heart actually looks like after it's been printed. And then, in particular, the heart has two primary mechanisms for transporting blood through the body: contractile and electrical system based on the intra and extracellular calcium ion exchange. This introduces recent trends in 3D bioprinted cardiac tissues and the measurements of their structural, contractile, and electrical properties in real time. Cardiac models have also been regarded as alternatives to animal models and drug testing platforms. Perspectives of 3D bioprinted cardiac tissue and their assessments for use in drug development are also presented. Scientists are constantly having breakthroughs in technology every day. This breakthrough is just one of many that has the potential to change and save lives. Bioprinting technology will one day have the ability to print livers, kidneys, lungs, and any other organ our body needs, improving the future of medicine altogether. Any questions?
So right now, they've created a heart. You showed us a picture. They're just using that heart for research purposes, like they're doing drug testing. They haven't actually put one in a person yet.
So
is that true?
So Ms. Gumiher asked if they put the heart in like a live person yet. They haven't. They've just been having controlled experiments in a lab, like running fluids through it to see if all the vessels are properly, just stuff like that right now.
Have they done it with like simpler animal? I mean, I don't.
I don't know if they have that
Okay.
yet. They didn't mention anything about animals, but this had it was another option to animal testing. So.
Anybody else? Come on, it's our last one. Hit her with questions. All right, let me think. What else I got?
Does age have any limitations?
So Iron asked if age has any limitation. It didn't say anything about age. I mean, surgery and everything you have to go through, so the older you get, the more risks there are, but it's less invasive than a whole organ donation. Yes.
What do they actually make the 3D cells out of?
So they take MRI scans and CT scans, and they will extract cells, your own cells, and then they use biomaterials and biological molecules to 3D print the cells into the organ, and they'll eventually grow.
And since they're the same as genetically, they're similar to your very own cells. They've got the same genetic basis. Your body won't reject them because it recognizes them as belonging there, which is really ideal. Mr. Dijon, anything? Ms. Wilson, anything? Mr. Dijon left. Oh, you lucky. All right, thank you so much, Sydney.